February 6, 2022. I just did a little piece on like the dust bunny over there that's now removed that used to be there. Static charge airflow, perhaps. I've been sitting in one place for way too long. And it's like I've got nothing better to do. I don't know what else to do with my time. I mean, it is pathetic. So I'm watching CBS this morning with Lynn and Lou as couch potatoes. Lynn's sitting in this chair, Lou's sitting there, and then I was at the weigh-in. And on comes this story about Seneca Village. And it is like powerfully charged in like I mean, there is a artifact. First of all, I mean, I watched their reactions. Dumb as ever. They're watching it going, oh my God, look how great that is. Like, totally bamboozled, like, right over the head. Whatever Jane Pauley and the cast at CBS messing things up in the morning, the way that they told it, my parents, like, bought it hook, line, and sinker, and I'm sitting here like, are you all for real? Like, did you not spot the fact that there was Dutch pottery? Like, I mean, it's a well-known fact that blue and white hand-painted tiles, Tiles, is some form of, like, and again, I can't remember specifically if it's like a wedding tradition, if they're put in a mosaic in a sacred spot in the house that's not to be trampled over, or if it's on a piece of almost, I hate to say the word fine dining ware. Let's just put it that way, because otherwise it's a word that now someone thinks is a country or thinks the word that used to be represented as porcelain is now whatever in this mess of like, I thought you had mutually exclusive between the top and the bottom. Why on earth are you now like totally inclusive and became in this debauchery causing botulism where you can't even like pick your own pieces back out? How did we get here? So now I'm watching this program and I see it. It's mentioned. It's in there.
Mommy, are you a good parent? Because if you are, you have to feed me.
So I'm watching it, and they actually had an archaeological dig where they pulled out the, in the story supposedly, they pulled out this pottery. But the pottery is indicative by ancestry and artifact as traditionally, I thought it was the word Dutch, Dutch. Maybe it was Danish, Danish. I'm not quite sure, because again, I don't know anthropologists, I don't know archaeologists.
The boys are coming?
I'm in the middle of something.
What are you in the middle of?
So,
She's an anthropologist.
Oh, she's in the middle of anthropology.
so anyway, so that happens. So that happened. And then it just glazes over that fact. And the person, like, it looks like it's coming through a non-Danish, non-Dutch person. And it seems like they're claiming over the actual ancestors. In fact, there was someone who took on the name of Williams later on in the show, and they're saying, but we're descendants of this Williams that's on the map.
Oh my God!
But there was an archaeological dig with artifacts from people that are not indicative. Like, the facts don't match some of the disclaimers or the claimers. I mean, it's a little confusing as to how this much promotion of false narrative is allowed in broad daylight, confusing the heck out of my parents' generation. I mean, like, they didn't even spot it. And they're just like, oh, that's so wonderful, the ancestors, they got whatever. And I'm like, how do I protect my kids from my parents when they're just right over? Like, they just glaze. It's almost like they zone out or they tune out, or they're just miswired inside this system. I mean, like, I don't know how else to say it. Not a popular belief, but the world not working the way that it is.
Park still has its secrets, and Faith Saley came across one that may surprise you.
Most people who walk through Central Park, from tourists to
And-
lifelong New Yorkers,
And let's put it this way. In the grand schematic of things, I'm not like, New York is not my favorite place in the world. New York City, I really hate it. So, like, am I defending something that, like, I'm willing to, like, die for? Absolutely effing not. It's just the point that I see this happening in other places that scare the absolute heck out of me. Because I don't understand why so much of this is going on, where they take one thing from here and make a claim, and now all of a sudden it becomes some like long arduous court battle or some wrong message put out to the public, which then other people catch on to. It started off as a rumor, but then in someone's head it becomes a fact, and then all of a sudden it becomes a larger fight than ever before, and then it becomes a misnomer and a misdirected whatever. And as time goes on, it becomes harder and harder.
have no idea of the history under their feet. Where are we?
I'll tell you, this is capitalizing on a miscommunication project that's been going on in New York for some time due to some other inclement weather somewhere in the world. Because, I mean, my mom went to public school here all throughout, from kindergarten, nursery school, all the way up with all of her brothers and sisters. I, only child, went as well. There has been no local, like, New York City history, no Long Island history, that kind of thing. So it opened up this, like, really lesser known window of opportunity that was exploited for the wrong history to be injected or inserted and exploited and then fought over in the most insidious ways, leaving some of us in some form of, like, it feels like wait and hold pattern until someone else figures it out. But I don't see it being a priority, and I see these messages getting louder and louder and louder, and I really don't see, like, where the benefit is in the world.
We are in the heart of Seneca Village. This is where the churches would be nearby, the schools would be in this area.
In 1825, a 25-year-old African-American shoe shiner named Andrew Williams bought.
Now, here's the thing about 1825. It's a catalog number somewhere in someone's historical reference, but African American in 1825 is not necessarily what is claiming to be African American now. Because I know there are people on the continents of Africa that look like my ancestry at some point. I don't know what year. I don't know what they call themselves, but I'm pretty sure if they don't speak English as a first language and they come to New York, they're going to call themselves African to American. So right there, the false narrative of, I mean, there's more than just one set of people on the continent of Africa. I get that. What gets confusing in this all-American in this false, like, front of all American for some other fight that's going on elsewhere. Like this totalitarian word. I'm like, does that tie into your all American, like, theatrics that are going horribly wrong? Just curious.
Bought this land 2 years before slavery was abolished in New York. We'll return to his story later. More free black Americans followed, fleeing the disease and discrimination of downtown. And
Now, Black American is someone who might not have spoken English on the continent of Africa, but may have been of my ancestry. May not have been what is actually claiming ancestry now. Just curious. If they, to like the she or the rich or the whatever, is it possible that the Gauche Society was labeled as misnomer black because they were also like dirty, like compared to like those that could bathe every day? I mean, again, there's been so many like nasty things said throughout, but I mean, on one level it is descriptive. I mean, how to tell the difference, but it's also to keep set labels and records safe for one's ancestry heraldry and keeping things straight and on track so people don't just put in these false claims. And again, that has to do with gigantic power grabs and displacement of not only people but assets and power and by value.
And together, they created a bustling settlement of their own, known as Seneca Village.
Seneca Village was a place.
Now, question, when they say this word settlement, it worries me. Is this one of those establishment words at the one percenters where they thought they were doing one thing and then, oops, did I contribute to like the world falling apart and like x-ray technology, because now all of a sudden there's too many radio stations, nobody knows how to tell the kids no, and now they're fighting over all the new cool toys and electronics? Yeah. So how do we get that back on track? I'm just curious.
It was a place of opportunity. It was a reaction to racism.
Cynthia Copeland is president of the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History and has spent decades uncovering its story.
There's a chance that Seneca Village was part of the Underground Railroad?
There is, and it's speculative, but highly probable.
Speculative.
Why do you think the history has been untold and unknown until relatively recently?
The victorious are the ones who get to write.
The victorious or Victorian? I'm just curious because there's a big distinction within the debauchery committee on what's going on when these words are spoken.
Write the stories. These were people who were forgotten. And it is unfortunate that
Forgotten. Really, imagine we forget one of our own in the field while someone else is enjoying some other lavish lifestyle.
the story was hidden for so long. But it's great that the story is now has emerged.
Much of the story is an enduring mystery, but an archaeological dig.
And there it is. This archaeological dig, this is that blue and white tile that is native to somewhere. I've heard it here in English. I've heard it referenced, the language of English. I've heard it in 19th and 20th century. The humans that I've been amongst, they've mentioned this type of pottery as Danish or Dutch, but I don't know the distinction that's agreed upon within the set society of whatever is allowed to call this their ancestry. They also had the blue pottery. Now, at some point, that also goes back to, and I don't even know if it was started in Etruscan, because they were in Italy. And there was a special snail in the Mediterranean at some point that, I mean, it's part of Viking history as well, but the snail and the indigo violet dye that came from this very particular snail. But that's Phoenician, I believe. The anthropologists refer to it as Phoenician on the broadcasts, but they don't. Again, that's where those holes in its actual fact, but they don't always put the correct detail on the correct whatever in the story format without actual claim, I suppose. Again, it's semantics, but the syntax is incredibly important with taxidermy.
Hundreds of artifacts from the villagers' middle-class lives.
We found lots of beautiful bottles, a shoe that was probably the size that was used by one of the children, and one of the students just started to cry.
Seneca Village was home to the largest number of African American property owners in New York before the Civil War. And because those black men possessed property, they had the ability to vote. Irish and German immigrants moved in too, and white and black villagers attended church side by side. But when New York City elites wanted to create a park that rivaled those of Europe, they were drawn to the middle of Manhattan.
There was a smear campaign that was created in the media.
Smear campaign? No. Like my relatives fight somewhere in Forever Family? I mean, it does explain why I was left out in the lurch and the dust and why I haven't been able to get anywhere, but I'm just saying.
We've got to get rid of all those people that live in the park that shouldn't be there. They are tramp squatters and thieves. This is the kind of language that they used.
In 1853, the city used eminent domain to take control of the land. In all, about 1,600...
Again, I'm just going with family. Like, it was a crime scene when I arrived in 1978. I don't know who took part in it. I don't know what it's currently, where it's headed, but I'm just letting you know where 2022 is, because I'm not living the life O'Reilly, and I am not where I needed to get to in astrological and zodiac programming for cosmological certains.
100 residents
At
were
CERN
displaced,
concerned.
including nearly 300 from Seneca Village.
People were not happy, and they put up a fight.
But to no avail. Seneca Village lasted only 32 years. Central Park was created and the rest is history, but an incomplete history until recently. A monument to a prominent Seneca Village family is underway, and the Central Park...
Now all of a sudden, even though the pottery is indicative of a different people,
Central Park was created
now
and the rest is history.
it's one thing to have the map and the story.
History,
now all of a
but
sudden,
an incomplete history until recently. A monument to a prominent
now all of a sudden, they're adding these names, which leads to confusion and then turns to anger at times, or has been known to, which then disrupts things that really need to be tended to.
Seneca Village family is underway, and the Central Park Conservancy installed an outdoor exhibit.
So we believe that this was the main water source for the village. This was a natural spring that has existed for a really long time.
Marie Warsh is a historian for the Conservancy and gives
Though we're not sure, but we believe.
and gives tours of the landscape.
The reservoir was here. It seems like Central Park has always existed. So I think people are really amazed that there were people living here.
One of the questions I think a lot of people have is, where did everybody go? Who are the descendants?
That was the question. What happened to the people? Where did they go? And I said, well, I'll take on the job of looking them up.
Cal Jones, Manhattan Borough Historian Emeritus, has spent thousands of hours researching the residence.
No idea what an emeritus means.
Starting with Andrew Williams, the shoe shiner.
He was a visionary. So I can see him building the house off of the road. You can see this is his.
So now we're doing visionary work and constructing a theatrical what if, and then adding photos to it and adding to a claim, which how do you know if it's false or not, and who certifies it, and who passes forward and is responsible for the correct information? I'm just curious. I mean, this is one tiny example, but it's existential in framework, construction, and building of something while it feels like deconstruction's going on somewhere else. And it goes into that old adage, like you take one step forward and then two steps back. It's really, in my instance, it's not
Two
working.
lots. I looked at the Andrew Williams Seneca Village as sort of like a puzzle. Now let me put the pieces of this puzzle together to see this beautiful picture.
And last year, that picture became a lot clearer when someone with a familiar name heard about his quest and reached out.
It almost felt like I found a trip.
And now here comes buy-in and tie-in to almost like solidify, rock solid, a win that wasn't necessarily on anyone's radar, but got thrown out to public whatever. Is anybody even watching? Is there life on the planet anywhere that sees what's going on?
Treasure.
Andrew Thomas Williams IV is the great-great-great-grandson of Andrew Williams. He and his wife Mariah.
Perhaps of the puzzle piece that the gentleman, the visionary in this whatever, that is a true fact. But the photos of the original person and the artifacts that were actually physically dug up don't work along with the ending piece where they're really like what I would consider in colloquial like urbanite English, like driving the point home for like a win of some sort.
Mariah didn't realize the connection to Seneca Village until a researcher messaged them on Facebook. And suddenly, the history of Seneca Village became the history of their family.
My great-grandfather had a music school where he taught music. And it made the whole Andrew Thomas Williams line so much better. Because I really, truly now get that connection. It's not just a name.
How did that feel to you?
And
It
so
gave
now
me a
there's
sense of
timeline, there's time frame, there's some kind of roots, but the original facts were, it was built off of a foundation that's not as solid as the whole tie-in committee makes it seem. So now that becomes really difficult in broad range communication, because it's almost like once you build this false fake narrative and you get loud and proud and you get people to like buy into it, and then like you're telling the story forward wrong for so many generations, then all of a sudden it's like, no, that's our roots, that's our this, that's our that. No, it's your false narrative, and it's making other things more dangerous. I mean, I don't even know where my people are and where the largest and longest route goes. I mean, I'm honest about it. I don't understand why everybody else is like doing all this false narrative and like staking claims and things. It's like, yeah, where'd you get your information from and how far back is it actually truthful and honest? And like in some form of semblance with the facts in other whatevers. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxies, broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. That's not even my main thing. I mean, again, it's more of this, as I stand back. It's more of the light that washes through at this angle on an oblique that scares me. I mean, I can see dimension when I go out there, but that's always just beyond what I can see. And that's what, like, it's almost like what my body is picking up on, and however anatomy and physiology work within environmental and life sciences. It's star 1978, star 8378, and it's February 6th, 2022. It's a Sunday morning.